All right, so it's recording, and I wanted to show you, since I didn't make a video for this, I'm going to show you how I did the color wheel. I used this plate to draw my first circle, pretty simple. And then to see if I'm kind of in the middle, I'm kind of measuring, and this is a shorter distance than that, so I should move it that way a little. And let's see now. There, there, it's about right, it's about the same. That's about the same, and that's about the same. So I'll draw this circle right here. And then I'm going to take my ruler, and this is about the widest part, 2.5 inches. So that means 1.25 inches is about where the middle is. So from this direction, that's 2.5. So let's see, 2.5. It seems like the widest point is here, which would make that the center. So 1.25. Those are really far away, so not quite right on my center. So here, 1.25. 1.25. So this is my center about. So if I draw a line down the center, I'm not going to go all the way, I'm just going to divide the spaces in here. And I need 12 of them. So that means I want to first divide it up into 6, which means I need 3 of these lines that go cut all the way across. So these need to be divided into thirds. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And so this is this wide, needs to be wider. 1, 2, a little bit wider. So 1, 2, closer. And this 1. And I think they still need to be a little bit bigger. So that feels more. Now, these I need to divide in half. So I'm going to say about here, about here. If I line this up to those. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of evenly divided spaces. And each one of those I'm going to now divide in half, and I'm going to do that kind of by marking the center point on this arc. And taking my ruler and dividing these spaces. So here, about there is the middle. And here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to label these. I'm going to use my fountain pen. So the first one is going to be the Quinn Rose. I'm just going to do Q Rose. And it's the blue leaning red. So a small b with a large R. Okay. Then over here is going to be the Pyrrole Scarlet. And that is a yellow leaning red. And then over here, and then we're gonna have the two in between spaces. And then here, we have the red leaning yellow, which is new gamboge. And that's yellow, but it's leans red, yellow. And then you have your Hansa yellow light. And that is a yellow that leans blue. So small blue, large Y, blue yellow. Skip 2. So we have 2 in between each of the primary colors. So here we have our blues, and we're going to go with the phthalo blue because it leans to the yellow. And you want to make sure that you do use your colors in this order because you don't want to be mixing your yellow that leans red with your blues. You want to mix your yellow that leans to the blue with your blues. All right, so phthalo blue, PH, there's no A there, THALO, phthalo blue. And that's a yellow leaning blue. And then we have French ultramarine. It's okay that it went in there because this is waterproof ink. If you do use ink on your page, you want to make sure it's waterproof. I think it's waterproof. I may have just put in a different ink that's not waterproof. I'm going to switch to my other fountain pen. I'll have to test that or avoid that spot. Okay, so now the French ultramarine blue is the red leaning blue. I might be out of ink on here. So, red leaning blue. And over here, we're done. So now we're going to do on this one, 2 yellow reds and 1 red yellow when we mix. Here we're going to do 2 red yellow plus 1 yellow red. And then here we're going to do 2 blue yellow plus 1 yellow blue. I think I need to clean my fountain pen. So here, 1 yellow blue plus, no, it's 2 yellow blue. 2 yellow blue plus 1 blue yellow. And then here, we're going to go 2 French, oh, 2 red blue, 2 red blue plus 1 blue red. And here we'll go 2 blue red plus 1 red blue. All right, so let's put the colors in now. This is my palette when I did the video on the color mixing chart. You'll see this, and I used it. But I really put down more paint than I needed, and I didn't want to waste it, so I just kind of wiped off my palette and left the dots of paint where I could use them as individual colors still. So the first thing I want to do is make sure my brush is clean and put it around. Probably, this is a pretty inexpensive brush. If I had an expensive brush, I probably wouldn't be smashing it on the bottom of the jar, but this is not. So fresh water. I'm going to start up here with the Quinacridone Rose. And that's this one. And I'm going to try not to use too much water. In doing the mixing video, I used too much water, I think. I had a lot of blooms at the end. You'll notice on the finished work that I posted. I seem to have a cat hair in my brush. I have noticed this cellulose, this is student grade watercolor paper, which means basically it's not 100% cotton, that it's cellulose, and it doesn't absorb the water as quickly. It's fine, you just have to kind of push it in a little sometimes. I'm drying my brush with the rag. I'm gonna clean it in this water, clean it with the rag again, and then I'm not gonna do the next color here because this is wet and I don't want it to bleed in. So I'm gonna go into the new gamboge. So, new gamboge. This is the red leaning yellow. New gamboge. Okay, so that's the gamboge and phthalo blue. What's next? And this is my phthalo. Phthalo blue is a really strong color. And it's a staining color. If it's still wet, you could pull some of it off your page, but it's always going to stain the page a little bit. You'll always have a light blue or maybe even a dark blue because it really is a quite staining and quite intense color. And it's a bully. If you try to mix it with other colors, you just use a tiny bit of phthalo blue because your phthalo will just take it over other colors. Right, now I'm going to go back to the reds so I can do the Pyro Scarlet, the red that leans to the yellow. And that's this one. Can you see that? Yeah. Sometimes watercolor dries fast. Sometimes it dries not so fast. Depends on a few things. Depends on how much water you have in your water to pigment ratio. And it also depends on the humidity in the air. if I had the ceiling fan on, these would dry faster. But I don't want to turn it on because it'd be cold. So hands of yellow. This is the yellow that leans blue. So it's very much a lemon yellow. That little bit of dirt was in my palette because I left it out since I did the video. That's one thing about your paints. If you have some dried paint that you want to save and use later, it's best to cover it so you don't get a lot of dust deposited on it. Because when you go to re-wet it, all that, those little bits of dirt and dust are going to be on your brush and in the paint. So be aware. All right. And the last color without mixing is the ultramarine blue. This little bit of dry paint got unstuck from the palette. I got too much water in my brush. I want to get a nice intensity of this color. So this is ultramarine blue too. It looks like this can be really wet. And ultramarine. Ultramarine is your only granulating color, meaning that it sort of separates. You can see that was a piece of dust that was in my paint. Granulating colors separate the pigment. When you put it down, some of the pigment sort of separates. If you look at the color mixing chart that I did, if you look at the two if you look at the two lines of ultramarine blue, they're at the bottom and along the right edge, you can see that they have granulation in them. And if you look at that, you'll see what I mean by granulation. Doesn't seem to be granulating here. Maybe it will as it dries. Oh, I see some granulation now. But actually, the more water you use, the more granulation you will get. I can see some granulation starting to happen. Okay, so now we're going to go into mixing the colors. So 2 red, yellow, 2 yellow, red, 1 red, 2 yellow, red, 1 red, yellow. So it's not going to be exactly like 2 dots of this color with 1 dot of this color, because this might be a more potent color than this color. So you have to kind of mix it, and you're looking for a visual blending of a color that is more leaning towards this pyrrole scarlet, but is not so intensely red. It has more yellow in it, so it's going to be an orange color. So I have my new gamboge. I'm going to take, since I want more pyrrole scarlet in this, I'm just going to take some of this new gamboge and mix it into this. And that still kind of looks like the same color. So I'm going to grab more of this. And more of this. And now it looks more of an 2 of this and 1 part that. So visually, this is more of an orange color. That means more red than yellow. And dry my brush. Clean it again. I dry it before I clean it so that it keeps my rinse water cleaner for a longer period of time. So I need to find it clean. So I could just actually keep adding more of the new gambage to that little puddle of water. Because now I want this to dominate this mixture. Don't come over here, Steel. I'm gonna have to put him away. Steel, don't. You're gonna have to get banished. And okay, so I probably should have done another color, but I'm just worried about bleeding into there, but I'll just keep it separate. At this point, I don't want to be jumping around because I'm mixing colors. So now we have that part of the color wheel done. So this is a mix that leans more to the Pyrrole Scarlet, and this is a mix of the 2 colors that leans more towards the new gamboge. So now we're going to do the same with the blue and yellow to make greens. So this was our oranges, which are secondary colors. Now 2 blue yellow, so that's 2 of the phthalo, 2, which phthalo is very strong, to 1 of the lemon yellow. So this is the lemon yellow, and I'm going to disperse this. There's some little dust here and there. Those have green on them. See if I can get that off of there. Use this yellow. Okay. So I just got rid of the little bits of blue that were on here because it could have been the wrong blue. And this is the phthalo. So you can see I barely touched that blue, put it in here, and look, I've like totally taken over the yellow color. So this is a green that leans yellow. So we're going to go with this here. And the nice thing about this essentials set is that almost all of the pigments are single pigment colors. What that means is that if you look on the side of your tube, and I'll show you in a minute, it tells you what pigment is actually in the paint. And pigments are just dry powders that they blend with gum arabic or some other binder that is water soluble to make watercolors. A lot of manufacturers put honey in also so that when you touch your brush to the dry paint, it re-wets more easily and you don't have to fight the dry paint glog to get your paint off of there. Okay, so I was going to show you, like, this is phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is PB 15.3. That means it's pigment blue 15.3. So all phthalos are PB, all phthalo blues are PB 15, but there's different versions, and that's why it's 0.3. And it means green. So here I have a lot of water on this green, and I feel like it's going to cause a bloom, but maybe not. I think I might be able to just sort of like let it drift over and have the water, as long as the water is not all pooled in one area, probably will dry evenly. Here you can see a little bit of pooling on there. Now we're going to add more blue to that. And I hardly added any, and you can see that we're getting towards a very blue-green. So now we have more of a turquoise color. Mixed from the same two colors. It's just what color do you let dominate? And there's so many other colors that you can mix this in between these. Go to my brush. Now I'm going to do the French ultramarine and the quinacridone rose. French ultramarine. This has a bit of a flower petal, dry out petal on it. So this is going to be 2 red blue, 1 quin rose. So the quinacridones are synthetic pigments. So probably going to be strong. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit and see what it does. So this is more blue. Sorry. should drink my water. And this may seem time consuming to you, but you're learning about the colors you have, how to mix them, how to use them with the correct ratio of watercolor to water, watercolor pigment to water. So you can see the granulation starting to happen in this mixture here. Okay, so now we're going to add more Quin Rose. And more Quin Rose, because I'm putting more blue in here. So now we have a red purple. I think that's good. So one of the questions in the quiz is about why do we have a split primary palette? Why not just have one blue, one red, one yellow, and then have orange, one green, and one purple? Well, because then you only have one purple, one green. You can add other colors to it to try to make it a different value. But if you have a blue that I had a little bit of bleed in because this is still wet, it's okay. So if I had only a yellow that leans to the red and I mixed it with my blue that leans yellow, it wouldn't be a very clean color. So you just have more options this way. And that's what it is. You can mix your colors without getting muddy. Because the more colors you mix together, the less intense, the less saturation your color has. So the only color of the 6 colors that is a 2 pigment color is New Gamboge. And the reason for that is because it used to be PY 151, but they stopped manufacturing that pigment. And so there's no more actual real New Gamboge. So this is the color that has replaced it, and it's 2 pigments instead of 1. But for our purposes, that's fine. It'll work fine, because the problem is when you start to have watercolors that have 3 pigments mixed in one color, 2 pigments mixed in another color. Some pigments are made with 5 colors. So you don't know that unless you're reading your tubes, and then you start to mix, and pretty soon you have mud, and you're wondering why you mix 2 colors and you have mud. Could be because you actually have 5 colors mixed together instead of just 2. All right, so the other thing that you have to do on here is that you have to do 2 colors. My page is dirty. I'm kind of running out of the student grade watercolor paper and I don't want to buy any more, so I kind of used this one that had a little bit of smudges on it. Try to keep yours clean. So the next thing you're going to do is draw a couple of columns like this. And you're going to take two colors. It doesn't matter which colors you take. You want to make sure that you start with a puddle of color that you're going to have enough to do the entire exercise, which is you're going to have 10 swatches going from the most intense to the lightest, because it's going to show you how with watercolor you really are using the water to dilute the pigment. And by diluting the pigment, it lets the white of the page show through. So that's how you get your value, by letting the white show through and diluting the paint. So we're going to make a really intensely saturated color to start with for our darkest value. So I'm using purple. You can use any color. You can use a color straight out of the tube. You can use a mixed color. So here's my really super intense purple. And now I'm going to see if I can get a lighter color just by not depositing as much pigment and water. Okay, so I think that's good for my next swatch. Now this next one should be a little bit lighter. So take some of the pink off my brush. Maybe. And adding a little bit of water. Just like one drop. So I think that is a little bit lighter than the one above it. Could be a little darker. You can see the granulation happening, and that's kind of what's happening too, is that the ultramarine, French ultramarine and the quinacridone rose, which this is a blend of, are separating, the pigments are separating. Okay, so now even lighter value. Maybe another drop of water. That was 2 drops. That's too dark. So I'm going to come back and pick up some of that pigment. And that lighter, I think so. Another thing that you'll notice is that there's a color shift. When colors dry, they dry lighter than when you put them down. It's not as intense or noticeable when you're using professional colors, which these are, but if you're using like the student grade, a lot of times those will have a bigger shift because there's not as much pigment in them. Okay, so that's a little lighter. There's not as much of a difference between the other two as that one. So now we go. That's good. And add more water. And this got a little darker, but I can. Pull that up. And I'm going to need to remove some of that. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I need 2 more. You want to have 10. I'm going to add more water. And that's a little too dark, so I'm going to pull some out. And maybe this one can be a little darker. And maybe I'm going to see if I can lift some of that. I think that's good. So this one could be a little lighter. It's too dark. So I'm lifting. This is called lifting, and you can do that. Some pigments lift better than others. Ultramarine, which there's some ultramarine in here, it lifts okay. So what I'm going to do is get some clean water and brush some of that off because there's too much on there. So you can lift with the rag or you can lift with your brush. And that's lighter, has a little halo around it, but for our purposes. Basically what you want to be doing is being able to judge and put really super light values down. So I'm going to put more water in my brush. I mean, sometimes your lightest value can just be like, if you're only using one color in your water, is the color that you're cleaning your brush with. Be that light. So, and I might go one lighter, even though you only have to have 10, I'm going to go to 11. Okay, so that's that. And it's 2 o'clock.